We have breaking news. We have a video from Graham Plattner, who is addressing the public. Let's play that.
Hey, everyone. It's Graham Plattner here. I think as many of you know, over the past couple days, I have faced some very serious allegations, and I just want to make it clear. This is all false. The things that have been claimed did not happen. It's not real. It has placed an immense amount of weight on me as I think about what needs to happen now. Amy and I are regular people. We were not looking for this experience. We were not looking to get into politics. We had no desire to run for office. I just want you to think about like what you would do as a regular person in a position where a much larger world, large forces were working against you personally to accuse you of the worst thing that a person could do, and it was not remotely true. I learned about this through press inquiries with no time to truly respond, no time for investigations before a corporate media system and the political establishment got to act as judge, jury, and executioner. Accusations are supposed to be the beginning of things, not the end. I think it's really important to understand why this is happening in the timeline, why this is happening right now. Much like October, when the first attack started, much like the news that was created the week before the primary, there is a reason that this is happening now. I only have until July 13th until I am officially the nominee. This was the last week to try to get me off of the ballot. And that's why this is occurring. It's not the false allegations, though, that have brought us to where we are. It's the fact that they are being used by the political establishment to put structural pressure on us. We live in a political system that is not built for normal people. It is a system that is built structurally to make sure that movements like ours cannot flourish. That if they begin to succeed, they can be crushed. What we have accomplished here, you made possible. The people of Maine, the volunteers, the voters, the grassroots donors. And I have all the faith in the world that we could win if we could continue to harness that. But the brutal political reality is that they are going to take everything away from us. Those in power who have the ability to do so are using these allegations as an excuse to take away all of the things that we need to run a campaign. We are going to lose our ability to fundraise. We are going to lose our ability to access voter data. We are going to lose all of the things that any campaign needs on the basic level simply to function. Larger organizations, the national level party, the bigger donor networks, they have all committed to spending no money in this race if I'm in it. They would rather see Susan Collins win than have me be the next senator from Maine. What comes next needs to come from the people. needs to come from the people of Maine, needs to come from the voters who on June 9th, at a strength of over 150,000, the largest number in the history of Maine primaries, said no to this kind of politics. Voted for a politics that would actually represent them. Voted against the political system, against the donor class, against the entrenched forces. And I'm not asking for how this process is going to work. I'm not trying to dictate to anyone who it should be or how we get there, but I will say this. It needs to be open, transparent, and democratic. It needs to be reflecting the will and the values of the people that built this movement, the people that showed up on June 9th. People in D.C. need to stay in D.C. Decisions should not be made in back rooms by people in places of political power. Party apparatchiks are not the ones to make these decisions. These decisions need to be made in the open by the people of this state, the people who got us here. This is exactly the kind of political system that everyone voted against on June 9th. And for that reason, we need to be assured that it is going to be open and democratic as we move forward. Amy and I struggled about getting into this. Last summer, right around this time of year, we sat down and we looked at each other and we said, if we believe in the kind of politics we think that we do, we have to do this. Over the past couple days, really yesterday and today, we have had to have that exact same conversation. We believe that for the movement to continue, it can't be me. And for that reason, we are suspending campaign operations. This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not. We're not doing it because of the allegations. We're doing it because of the structures that are being taken away from us by those in power. And I also feel an immense amount of responsibility to everyone who has worked so hard to get us to where we are. We went toe-to-toe with one of the most entrenched political systems in the history of the world, and we won. We beat them on June 9th in overwhelming numbers. We did it the right way. We built a campaign. We engaged in electoral politics. We motivated people. We banded together. We did it the way that we were told we are supposed to make change. And we won. And now they are not going to let us have it. Not if it's me. And so we're suspending campaign operations. I want to make clear, though, I intend to file my paperwork to withdraw. The process needs to assure that what comes next is reflective of the Mainers who on June 9th turned out and showed that they are desperate for a different kind of politics. It needs to be driven not from back rooms, but by the will of the people. And the decisions that come next must come from that. All we were asking for was health care, was to end the genocide, to use our taxpayer dollars at home to uplift our communities instead of waging war overseas. We were asking for a fair system. We were asking for an end to the corruption, the end to the money in politics. We were asking for real democracy, and we did it the right way, and we won. But now the ball is in the court of the Democratic establishment. My name might be on the ballot right now, but that ballot line belongs to the people of Maine. And on November 3rd, it needs to belong to the people of Maine. And the next Democratic senator for Maine needs to belong to the people of Maine. They need to reflect the will and the values of the people of this state. I love this state. I love Maine, and I love Mainers in ways that I can't really describe. I'm immensely proud of what we have built, and I have the utmost faith that we will continue to build, and we will continue to move towards a better future. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank all of you. And keep fighting. We're going to win someday.
Well, that was Graham Plattner officially announcing that he is dropping off of the ballot for Maine Senate, or for federal Senate from Maine, but taking zero responsibility for any of the scandals and more troubling things in his past that have destroyed that campaign, instead blaming, corporate media, the political establishment, lots of hate for the political establishment, saying that we banded together, we did it the way we were told we were supposed to make change, and we won, and now they are not going to let us have it. So lots of finger pointing and blame and not taking any responsibility. Note that whoever he conceives of as the political establishment, you do have many of his once allies, including Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna, also calling for him to drop out, people who believe many of the same policy ideas that Graham Plattner himself says that he was taken down for. He also said during that 10-minute video that all we were asking for was health care, was to end the genocide, to use our taxpayer dollars at home to uplift our communities instead of waging war overseas. We were asking for a fair system. We are asking for an end to the corruption. So lots of allegations that he was being taken out by nefarious forces that are forcing him to suspend his campaign, rather than the drip, drip, drip of scandal after scandal that has dogged his campaign and that have littered the last few months with red flags. I want to bring back in our guests at the table, Neera Tanden from CAP, as well as Nikki McCann Ramirez from Rolling Stone. So, Nikki, what did you make of that mini documentary that we just watched?
I think it's clear that whoever was advising him in media has left the campaign at this point, because that's not a statement you let your candidate put out on their own. I also think when I see something like that, my question is always, who is they? Who is they? Is it the AFL-CIO? Is it the Maine Democratic Party? Is it, the dozens of allies you have who have abandoned your campaign? I think Plattner would have been much better served by a 2-minute video announcing that he was suspending campaign operations. He could deny the allegations. That is his right. This has not been proven in a court of law. They are allegations. But this screed, I don't think, does anything to help transition out toward a new candidate, to bolster sort of the idea that this process is going to go forward, that he supports having his voters, who he claims to care about, continue to be represented by someone who holds their same values. I think the thing here is that Graham Plattner, time and time again, was given chances by the voters of Maine. I know a lot of voters who live in Maine, friends of mine, who swallowed a lot of stuff, who were deeply uncomfortable with the stories coming out about Graham Plattner. And they swallowed that and they voted for him because they thought that in the slate of candidates before him, he was the best chance to defeat Susan Collins. And the people he has let down the most, aside from the people who he, allegedly criminally assaulted, are the voters of Maine who believed in him, who gave him their time, their energy, their votes, who invested their belief that they could actually have a better government in him. And he let them down by not being honest with them. It wasn't that he wasn't honest to us, to the media, to the donor class, is that he wasn't transparent with his voters. And that video, I don't know. If there was any respect left for me, it's kind of gone after seeing that. There were so many ways to bow out of this race that weren't that.
Yeah. I do want to get your thoughts, Neera, but first I want to go to MS Now Capitol Hill reporter Kevin Fry, who is live on the scene in Bangor, Maine. Kevin, what are you hearing on the ground from voters about how all of this has shaken out in the last few days?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been about a month since I was here last, and at that point, that was right after the New York Times sexting scandal, and a lot of folks were willing to, as was just being mentioned, digest this and say, okay, we're gonna accept the narrative that he is a changed man. As we talked to folks over the last day and a half that we've been here, it is very much we've turned the corner. The red line that no one could really identify necessarily a month ago had been crossed. The Rubicon had been overcome, and that was because of the reporting in the last 2 days. So this felt like where we were inevitably tumbling toward. Now, as we've been talking to voters, they would like to see what they described as a quick and a transparent process. They want to see this as being democratic. And several folks that we spoke to were quick to name drop folks, including Troy Jackson. They see him, at least a couple of the folks that we talked to, as kind of picking up at least the policy aims that maybe Plattner was espousing, but certainly without the baggage that he carried. Now, some of the news within the last 2 hours or so beyond this Plattner statement is that we now have at least a preliminary sense of what this process is going to now look like, now that there is going to be a vacancy on the Democratic line ahead of November's election. And that is that the Maine Democratic Party today, members of the committee, met, about 100 or so of them, discussed exactly the steps forward. And our understanding from talking to sources that were on that call is that this looks like it's going to be about 500 to 600 delegates meeting for a convention, time to be announced. But the counties are supposed to, we're being told, start working on figuring out who those delegates are going to be, to send them to this centralized meeting, and from there they'll work on electing a candidate. Obviously, one of the tensions that we're expecting to see and that we've witnessed over the last few days is between kind of the party establishment versus those that believe that they need to basically poke the establishment in the eye. That could also be interpreted as more progressives versus moderates. There are different ways of kind of interpreting this depending on who you're talking to, but that is at least how voters are kind of responding to what we're looking at with the prospect of an opening, and how the party is, at least at the moment, preparing to navigate it.
Kevin, thanks so much for your time. I am sure we will be heading back to you later this evening and in the coming days to hear your insights on what people are saying on the ground and how this convention of sorts is going to shape up. Thanks so much. Neera, so you watched this 10-minute video as well from Graham Plattner, refusing to take responsibility for any of the things in his past. He certainly has the right to defend himself against some of these criminal allegations, but not taking any responsibility for how his campaign has ended up. Do you think that was helpful for the party to move forward and to defeat Susan Collins?
I mean, I guess I'd say, look, this whole situation is a horrifying tragedy on so many levels. And the people I feel the worst for are really the people Nikki is talking about. The people who were betrayed by Graham Plattner. I mean, he's angry at the world, but it's his own actions that have caused this situation that we're in. And I feel like the fact that he takes zero responsibility of that really enrages me. But I feel the people I feel the worst for in this situation are people who felt hope about this campaign. And I do think the process has to ensure that people who felt hope in this campaign, in his campaign, and about change in Maine have a voice in that process. I mean, what I found sort of really disturbing about this video is there's so much more ire to like Democrats nationally than two people he never mentioned, Susan Collins or Donald Trump. And I find it sort of tragic that after all the destruction and wreckage, he's going out by basically trying to torch Democrats. And just as a reminder, he did win the primary, but it's his own actions that have caused this. And you don't have to ask me. You can ask Senator Sanders, Senator Warren, Congressman Khanna, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. These are his allies in the fight who recognized what happened here was horrifying. And genuinely, I hope that in future there can be more acceptance and actually trying to build back, because this is he's caused a lot of pain to a lot of people who put their hopes in him, and those people are the ones who need to find hope again. And I think it's his responsibility to be part of building, not destroying everything around him, but actually helping build support for whoever the nominee is in the future.
Yeah, I mean, and I should again say he has flatly denied the allegations of sexual assault, among other things that have accusations that have been levied against him. But I will say that the other people that I feel terrible for, not only because of the things that they say, are the women. Yes, it's not just the voters; it's the women who had to basically parade these awful periods of their lives, or what they, allegations that they have made at the very least, before the public and the media, because they felt like it was their civic responsibility to tell people.
And they're getting viciously attacked by people. It's really ugly. And, you're absolutely right. They are the victims of this whole situation and should never have had to bear this burden.
Yes, as well as one of his campaign staffers who has been smeared because she resigned early on. But anyway, I hope that there are a lot of apologies coming to some of those women.